try to lock on this dock to Sonic and Knuckles, see how many blue spheres we get out of that. That ain't happening. This is Sonic and Knuckles for Sega Genesis, and this title sequence alone justifies this video's existence and the need to play Sonic and Knuckles. And if you disagree, then you're wrong. Hey, at least here Knuckles is treated as an equal and not an afterthought. Which is what happened when they added a 3 to the title, but I digress. Anyway, released in 1994 and several months after the launch of Sonic 3, Sonic & Knuckles is what is now known as, and forever relegated to being, the ass end of the complete Sonic 3 Sonic the Hedgehog and Knuckles experience. And it was released in this nifty little cartridge in what they called lock-on technology. The idea being that you could take your copy of Sonic the Hedgehog 3, jam it to the lock-on segment of the Sonic & Knuckles cartridge, and you get both games combined to form one overall game, where you can play both set of levels and you're given the task of collecting up to 14 different emeralds to become Hyper Sonic, Super Sonic, and Super Other People. And that gave you the complete Sonic 3 the Hedgehog, blah 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 blah. Not only that, but if you had a copy of Sonic 2 laying around and popped that on top of this baby, you could play as Knuckles in Sonic 2 and use all of Knuckles' cool moves in Sonic 2 zones. But if you put Sonic 1 in Sonic and Knuckles, then all you get are blue balls. Lots and lots of blue balls. Poor Sonic 1's getting the shaft here. See kids, this is what we had to do back in the day to get these wonderful things you take for granted nowadays. You've got mobile ports and ROM hacks and special PC editions and all that fun stuff that lets you play characters from later games and older games. Well, we didn't have none of that back then. Back then we jammed stuff into slots and that's how we got things done, and it was great. Now get the fuck off my lawn. Now, as a standalone Sonic adventure that most people aren't going to play these days, for obvious reasons, I guess, Sonic & Knuckles lets you play as one of two characters. Sonic the Hedgehog, who play as he did in Sonic 3. He has a spin dash, he could use extra perks afforded from the 3 elemental shields he can come across introduced from the previous entry, and after acquiring all 7 Chaos Emeralds from those blue ball stages, he can transform into Super Sonic and move super fast, and oh yeah, he could play an extra stage at the end of the game that unlocks the true good ending to this whole shindig. An extra incentive you get with Super Sonic and no one else. In any case, it's the same Sonic we all know, love, tolerate, whatever. Nothing new to be found with this hedgehog, and that's fine by me. And then there's Knuckles. Meme. The freshly introduced rival character Knuckles the Echidna, who has his own story path to follow involving these egg robot things and other bits and bobs, but for the most part plays out more or less the same way until you reach the end, which is not the same as Sonic. Ooh, controversial. While Knuckles was technically playable in Sonic 3's 2-player mode, Sonic & Knuckles actually fleshes him out to be a more complete character and actually quite a different character from Sonic or even Tails for that matter. Knuckles' jumps aren't quite as high as Sonic, and like Tails, he can't take advantage of the extra shield abilities, but he can glide in the air for as long as he has room to glide, or as long as you're holding the button, which can be useful in covering large parts of level. Knuckles can also cling to certain walls and climb up and down, which makes it useful for reaching ground that otherwise would be out of reach. This opens up his options for exploration, which again involves searching for hidden pockets of goodies or giant rings to access those special stages of blue balls, for those emerald things. And of course, whereas Sonic needs to ball up and cut weak walls into butter, Knuckles can just walk through them. He can just walk through them.
You are scum.
Naturally, due to special circumstances, Sonic & Knuckles is missing stuff from Sonic 3. There's no Tails, obviously, there's no save system, no gumball machine, nor is there a 2-player competitive mode. Your only playable characters are the aforementioned Sonic or Knuckles, the latter being this package's more lasting contribution. As before, you have 6 zones, usually comprising 2 acts apiece, each ending with a boss fight of sorts that you have to overcome, and of course those hidden rings scattered throughout. Sonic & Knuckles also has its own bonus games for you to play should you enter those star warps that appear above checkpoints after a certain ring count that's actually less than 50 this time around. There's the slot minigame that's reminiscent of the Sonic 1 special stages where everything is spinning around you, except you have the slot machine from the Casino Night Zone of the previous game. The other previous game, anyways. And then there's the one game with the glowy balls where you have to propel yourself upwards to avoid the death beam that just ends the level prematurely, but if you reach the top you'll end the bonus level normally and... okay. There's also new musical bits for invincibility, 1-ups, and other event things that eventually replace the Sonic 3 variants when we get to the eventual Stitch job. And yes, this is the second half of a much larger adventure. Yet Sonic & Knuckles' first zone, Mushroom Hill, feels like a fairly typical first act. Forest setting, lots of green, fairly easygoing. And if you pick Sonic, the game begins with no fanfare whatsoever. Just an old school open, pretty much. With Knuckles, you do get an opening cutscene that sees Knuckles chilling in a nice lush forest before egg dick robots come along and ruin his day. Later zone gives you the usual transitions and little character interactions, mostly with Sonic, but still that's something. And the musical bits aren't too bad either, some top tier tunes for sure to be found here. The zone variety is a bit lacking though. 2 tech-based type things and Flying Battery and Death Egg, another cave level, albeit with some volcanic properties. Sandopolis is fucking miserable and needs to fucking die, especially Act 2 with the ghosts and the sloping slides and all this shit. Even with Knuckles, this was an atrocious sloth to get through and may be up there with Labyrinth Zone as my most hated zone in the entire franchise. Yeah, greatest Sonic game ever made? Not with this bullshit zone it ain't. Fuck Sandopolis. And that's Sonic & Knuckles, a perfectly acceptable Sonic outing if there ever was one. But then there's the lock-on technology that's sitting within this naturally ill-fitting dome that you open up to reveal a cartridge slot to insert other Genesis cartridges, which will give you this screen. But pressing A, B, and C at the same time will let you play a round of blue spheres, and each cartridge has their own unique stage of blue balls for you to play. Please don't make me pull out the Ben Judd clip again, I am begging you. Now what you're supposed to do is pop in a copy of Sonic 3 on top and you get the completed, stitched together adventures of Sonic 3, Sonic the Hedgehog, and Knuckles. You know they missed the trick by not sticking this on Sega CD, try and sell a few of those units, but anyway, you can also pop in Sonic 2 to play as Knuckles in Sonic 2, with some slight changes to the zones to accommodate Knuckles' special skills and generally lower jumps. In this day of emulation, ROM hacks, remasters, and things of that nature, probably not that big of a deal, but back when that sort of thing was still largely foreign, this was actually pretty neat and a fun way to breathe new life into an old title. But since Sonic & Knuckles exists to be the console equivalent of a PC expansion pack, its main point is to give Sonic 3 that other half to give players the complete Sonic 3 experience that is pretty much the only thing that sees re-release in recent decades. The one we could play is either Sonic, Tails, and Knuckles. Amy Rose would be added later in for Origins Plus decades later, but for the purposes of this video, nobody cares about that one. So you get 2 additional save slots in the combined game for a total of 8, and whatever saves you have in Sonic 3 get copied over to 3 and K. And you can continue on from there, which after launch base you're in Mushroom Hill and you get an additional bit in the beginning where you'll find a new glowy ring. And if you enter the glowy ring, you'll appear in a very strange room, ooh. Now if you possess any Chaos Emeralds that you gained from the previous set of Blue Ball stages, those are taken from you and turned into bigger Gray Emeralds in the strange room. And it's from these big emeralds that you could attempt another set of special stages to acquire Super Emeralds, which if you manage to acquire all 7, will get you a more powerful Hyper Form, as well as a slightly nicer ending. The trade-off here is that if you gained all 7 Chaos Emeralds and enter one of these glowy rings, you sacrifice your Super Form for a chance at a slightly better Hyper Form, unless you're Tails, in which case you need to acquire 14 Emeralds, meaning completing 14 stages worth of blue balls to gain a Super Form. Now the completionists will want to go for it, but Super Sonic is more than enough to unlock that Doomsday Zone and a good enough ending, so at this point, you're more or less Mr. Burns contemplating spending $1 on eternal happiness, or in this case, a perfectly fine Super Form for a chance at a slightly nicer ending.
I'd be happier with the $1.
The longer adventure also exposes an inherent flaw in that while Sonic and Tails might need to go through all these zones to tell a whole story, Knuckles, whose adventure takes place after the other 2 schmucks take care of business, does not. In fact, starting a new game with Knuckles doesn't even give you an intro, you just start in Angel Island cold turkey, and no further story bits of significance happens until the very end. What happens is you just go from one zone to another, stuff happens, and that's it, really. Origins at least restores the intro from Sonic and Knuckles, which makes it all the more jarring because the poor dude's chilling in Mushroom Hill until a bomb lands in his face and all of a sudden, Angel Island, bitches. I don't know, to me it just paints a sad picture that the fully completed as intended picture fails to give Knuckles justifiable reasoning to be going through all 12 zones when the much shorter adventure in Sonic and Knuckles more than serves his story or lack thereof just fine. Last but least, going from the fun zones of Sonic 3 to the lesser stock of Sonic and Knuckles back end, I've already said my piece on Sandopolis. I liked Death Egg better when it was just 2 boss fights and a shitty jingle. The feeling of stages overstaying their welcome feel much more pronounced when you have more zones to play through, and half of them could have easily been dropped without a second thought. In at least one case, probably should have been. Oh, and what's the point of having 3 bonus stages to play through if all I get is the fucking slot machine? The longer adventure may be the intended vision and the preferred choice for a majority of fans, but in an age where most of these are played with emulators and save states of various shapes and sizes, I'm content in playing these separately. Sonic 3 for the fun zones, and Sonic & Knuckles for the Knuckles gameplay. And also Knuckles and Sonic 2 ain't too bad either. If I want to play Doomsday, hey, the cheat code is easier to pull off in Sonic & Knuckles than in Sonic 3. So yeah, save the blue balls for another time, such as when you pop in Sonic 1, which gives you a whole bunch of blue ball stages that you could access via codes if you have them, or you could play them one by one until the end of time. See, this lock-on functionality is what makes Sonic and Knuckles fascinating and part of why this gets its own video. The other part being Knuckles fisting on the title screen, which is apparently too hot for Sonic 3, Sonic the Hedgehogs, and Knuckles. I mean, yeah, the game itself is fine. It's more of what you got in Sonic 3, but with a fun new character in Knuckles and another set of not quite as fun zones to play through. But Sega rushed Sonic 3 out the release and they needed something to add that stuff in later. This lock-on technology that only got used for one game was what they came up with. It is the console equivalent of a standalone expansion pack, an idea in PC gaming where they'd release a new set of material to add to a pre-existing game such as new levels and such, but with the added benefit of not requiring the base software, though it would be nice to have. Nowadays, something like this would be treated as downloadable content and is something of a common practice today, but back then, something like this in the console space, I thought it was pretty cool and I kinda wish they made more games with similar lock-on capabilities. Probably would have sold me on the Sega bandwagon a lot sooner. But now I know why they didn't, because they only designed the technology with one game in mind. Both Sonic 3 and Sonic & Knuckles tend to be less common to find than the first 2 games, but last I checked they won't cost you an arm or a leg. Most people wouldn't see the point in playing these separately nowadays when the combined adventure is available in various forms, most notably Sonic Origins, which is presently the most convenient, and the most remastered edition, which has some perks going for it and not so much others. But I don't know, it's not quite the same experience. Your mileage may vary on that count, and however you go about it, these are as good a Sonic experience as the rest of them, and despite some misgivings, I found them to be largely enjoyable. That having been said, however, I think it's safe to say that I am pretty much done with this game. I have played more than enough Sonic 3, Sonic the Hedgehog 3D, Sonic & Knuckles the Echidna, and Sonic 3 Angel Air Island Revisited whatever the fuck to satisfy a lifetime. I've played a bunch of different iterations countless times over, probably more so than I needed to, just to confirm that this is the absolute masterpiece that everyone says it is, only to be struck with an epiphany of sorts and come to the realization that when it comes to playing the most gratifying 2D Sonic ever conceived in the glory days of Sega Genesis, yeah, fuck it, I'm sticking with Sonic 2. You've got a simple, straightforward title, nice, satisfying, speedy platforming fun complemented with a smooth visual style, clever set pieces, and some sweet tunes right out of the gate, with no need for CD add-ons, lock-on contraptions, nor are there any music tracks to replace or visible holes to fill. But more than anything, there's no time travel, no spin flops, no peel-outs, no super hyper emerald bullshit, no weird Sonic sprites, no labyrinth zone, and fuck Sandopolis. And the only slot machines to be found here are in Casino Night Zone where they belong. This is fine. Have fun with your blue balls. This is all the 2D Sonic I will ever need until the end of days. Thanks for watching, take care, and good night. But Sonic Mania ain't too bad either.
Come on, you're for your own good.
Come on. Come on. Come on. Got a lock on. Got a lock on with Knuckles. Come on. Come on, you can do it. Not so bad. Close enough.